All right, fam. So I want to go over something I have absolutely talked about before, I've coached on. It's not mine, but it's so important to understand because as a human, you grow in many different ways, okay? Physically, mentally, emotionally, intellectually, sexually, financially, socially, and spiritually, okay? And so it is your job to cater to your growth, to nurture your growth, to cultivate your growth in all of those areas. Now, the reason why we have a lot of like people who lack self-awareness is because they're not cultivating their growth in all those areas. They're financially illiterate, they're emotionally illiterate, which we're going to get to today. They are mentally not there. They are physically not doing the things they're supposed to. We have a whole bunch of unhappy people because they don't know how to cultivate their self. All right. And so the emotional scale is not a hard concept. It's a really easy one. I'm going to take some time to go through it and hopefully it will be beneficial to you. So let's just dive in. Okay. The emotional scale. This is an understanding you have to have about emotions. Okay. Your emotions are not good or bad. They just are. So many people are out here and they ascribe the expectation to sadness or happiness. Just because you have a positive emotion doesn't mean it is a good or a bad thing. Okay? So there are a lot of times I say this where I'm like, it can feel bad, but still be good. Right? You can feel bad about the thing, but it can be a really good thing. You've probably heard the thing that broke your heart, but like cleared your vision. It can feel awful, but it can be beneficial. Case in point in my own life, going to jail. Okay. Going to jail was an awful thing. It was very painful. It was not fun. It's very scary. It's not fun to be that out of control. It is not fun to be caged. It is not fun to be out of control of your life. Okay. If you have never been thrown in a cage as a human being, then you do not know. But let me tell you, it's not fun. And I was very scared and very fearful of my life and very, bad emotions. But it wasn't bad. It was actually really productive. And it ended up being really a good thing. It felt really bad at the time. Right? So that's true of our life most of the time. So we get a lot of people who are emotionally illiterate who think, oh, well, I feel bad and it's bad. It's bad to be sad. It's bad to be, no, it is human to be these things. Okay. So, one, stop personalizing your emotions. Okay. You are the one that thinks it's bad or good to be happy or sad, right? We have a lot of people out there who think it's like bad to cry. That is a social construct that is unproductive. It is normal and human to cry. Okay. So, no, it's not bad to cry. That's normal stuff. Babies come out of the womb and they can cry. Okay. So, the actual damaging thing is when you do not cry. You are blocking your natural flow of emotions. So, you need a perception flip. You need a perspective flip. Okay. If you have not cried in years, that's not a badge of honor. Okay. That's not a productive thing. Why? Because you're human and you have emotion, and your emotions are indicators of your thoughts. Okay. Thoughts create feelings, feelings create beliefs, beliefs create actions. And so when you're feeling some type of way, if you analyze it and you consider, hey, I'm upset, why? Instead of getting dragged down into the emotion, you think about, hey, why am I even in this emotion? You can start to figure out your thoughts, right? You can start to figure out why you're thinking the way you're thinking. So emotions are really productive because they tell you more about you and they are a part of you. Too often in the car of yourself, people try to leave emotions out of it. If you imagine yourself as a car, people think their emotions are on the road when really their emotions are driving the front seat. Okay. Your emotions need to be in the back seat, not in the trunk, not in the front or the passenger, not in the on the road somewhere like a hitchhiker. Your emotions need to be in the back seat, like a child, where you can look at them and pay attention to them, but they don't dictate where you're going, right? Your morality, your values code, your integrity should be the thing driving your car. Too often, that's not the case. Your logic should be in the passenger seat, right? That's also not often the case. And so, what we need to really get aware of is that emotions are important because they are true to you, whether you want to acknowledge them or not. So, emotional illiteracy begins when people think they don't have emotions. No, you absolutely do. So many, in fact, so many, right? Because emotions are just energy in motion, okay? Emotions have frequency. Everything in this life has frequency. Everything in this life has movement, right? If you're not moving, you're stagnant and you're dying, right? Your emotions have energy. The positive emotions have faster energy. We're going to talk about that today. And the lower ones have slower energy, which is why when you're depressed, you feel like you don't want to do anything. Okay. So here are some fundamental truths about emotions. If this is all new to you, that's okay. You are coming into emotional awareness and out of emotional illiteracy. So it is my pleasure to help you do that because this is helping you learn about yourself. So the emotional scale is a scale of emotions. I did not come up with it. Okay. And you move up and down the scale. So when you move up, you feel better. You might want an emotion, you might not want an emotion. Okay? That is true. Like you might be like, I'm sad and I don't want to feel sad or be sad. And then you need regulatory processes to help you move from one emotion to the next, right? What ends up happening is that the emotions that we don't pay attention to lodge in our emotional body. They lodge in our system. There's a book called Our Tissues Store Our, I'm sorry, it's called The Body Keeps Score, and it talks about how our tissues store our issues, which they do. The science backs this up. So any unresolved emotions you have, you are still carrying. So yes, it makes sense to start moving those out of your body sooner rather than later. Now, there's debate on this. There are people who say you can jump the scale. I haven't seen the truth of that. Not really. You can jump the scale from the type of emotion to the type of, sorry guys, my smoke alarm I can't fix right now, so we're just dealing with it. But you can jump from certain gaps, you'll see what I mean, but you really can't go from depressed to exhilarated. Like it's not it's very, very hard to do unless you've got like a serious pattern interrupt, right? You can do it in the moment, right? Like if you're depressed and your friend's like, hey, let's go skydiving, you're like, cool, let's go. You will be exhilarated in that moment, probably anxious, probably a lot of things, but it won't actually get you out of the long-term depression. It'll just get you out of that in the moment, which is still good. So it's fundamentally your state of emotional being doesn't really shift too much, but you can kind of shift the more surface level things. Emotions, like any energetic thing, can carry momentum. So good things compound like bad things can compound, and we'll see that as well. And then, of course, the more intense an emotion is, the more it lodges within you. So shame is a harder thing to root out than embarrassment, right? Because embarrassment is a like less serious, less severe degree of shame. Anxiety is easier to root out than fear. Fear is the root there. So we have certain root emotions that are really intense and deep. And then we have like more, or should say less intense versions of those emotions. So the emotional scale, let me jump ahead so that you can see it overall. So this is the scale overall. Top levels are things that are very high vibration and you feel euphoric when you're in them. People are always looking for these, right? When you feel joy, like look at children. Children are often in a state of joy. They're often in a state of curiosity. So they're often in this like exhilarated state. And people like to be around kids because they are just naturally like excitable. They have high levels of high frequency emotions. It's why people like to be around babies. Babies, all they do is look at like their parents with love. So we are not naturally meant to be in the lower levels here. Pessimism and down, those are, those are learned states. Babies are a good example. Children sometimes can be a good example, but babies are a good example because they are the natural emotional state of the human. They are optimistic, they fall, they get back up. They hurt themselves, they cry, they get over it, they move on, right? They are happy when they're fed, they're happy when they're paid attention to. They are just fundamentally up in the higher levels of emotional frequency. As we get older, as we are more in the world, as people who are hurt us, we start to internalize the lower frequency emotions. And so when we're not taken care of, when we are scared, when we are hopeless, we get in these lower kind of states and it's a spiral down, right? So every time we're disappointed, we go from hopeful, then we get some disappointment, and then we go to doubt it. And then when we see that person, we're like, are they going to show up or aren't they going to show up? And then we start to worry. And then we slip down. It is a very slippery slope down. It is a harder climb up, right? So when we see these kind of scales, everybody has this in them. Everybody has this in them, right? The capacity for it. Babies are born with fear. They're born with two fears, fear of loud noises and fear of falling. Those are what babies are born with. So it's not that they don't have fear. They do. It's just not, it's physical fear, right? Like it's things that they feel can endanger them in the moment versus what's called psychological fear. You know, the difference is there's a bear, you are physically fearing for your life. Someone has a gun to your head, physically fearing for your life. You are afraid you're not going to pass an exam. That's psychological fear, right? There's no damage or threat to you in the present, not actually. You know, you will be fine either way, but emotionally, psychologically, you will not be the best, right? If you don't pass this exam. And again, it's fear because you may or may not pass the exam, you know? Fear, where the bear and the gun are concerned, you may or may not die. A lot of fear has to do with uncertainty, right? On steroids. So like uncertainty is the lesser degree emotion, fear is the more severe, intense emotion. Now, jumping back, we want to try to be in the high levels of the emotional state. If we can walk in love, so many things open up for us, right? We're called to walk in love, to be honest. I can tell you right now, the more you get downtrodden in life, the harder it is to walk in these because you internalize the difficult things. So you don't have positive expectation or belief. You don't believe something good is going to happen to you because you have experience of all these bad things happening to you, right? So this is what we want to try to work up to. This is where most people live. Most people live kind of in here. They're like, things are fine. They could be better. They could be worse. Some people who look at the like glass half full kind of live in hopeful optimism. Some people who are pessimists and look at like glass of life half empty are frustrated, uncertain, they're pessimistic. Most people live in these levels and kind of like dabble up when a good circumstance change happens or dabble down when a circumstance change happens, right? And again, most people aren't actually thinking about their energetic or emotional level. They're just living it, right? Most people don't analyze their mindsets or figure out what's going on with them, but it is very important to do so. This is unfortunately where a lot of people are living now. If you look around, this is kind of like the overwhelming population. Like people are constantly disappointed, they're constantly doubting. So many people are in worry and anxiety that they're on medication for it, right? Instead of just moving through it and figuring out how to cope with it and emotionally regulating, they're trying to fix it quick with a pill. It's never going to work, unfortunately. That's like trying to like dam up a river. Well, eventually the water is going to break through. And anger and revenge is a place where a lot of people are. You see it all the time. People on like TikTok and all over the place, like people have a hair trigger, just real wild. So we are collectively kind of living here. This is where humans tend to live normally. This is where life is kind of at now. This is where a lot of people have their root. A lot of people have the root in despair and powerlessness. I'm going to show you a more varied scale on the end of the slide that gives more kind of insight. This is just like an overview, but a lot of people live in fear and despair and powerlessness. They feel like they can't be enough, they can't do enough. Your insecurities live here, your worth wounds live here, your lack of identity lives here, your purposelessness lives here. This is where a lot of people's fundamental kind of state of being exists. Very, very, very many people are fundamentally in one of these states. And because of that, it shows up as this. They're living out this part in their reality because in their self, they're this. I see it literally all the time. So the emotional scale, with more kind of layers, levels, I don't know, here. And you can spiral up and you can spiral down. What you can also have, as I call it, are like emotional ice cubes in your system. Okay. So, what these lower levels are slow moving. I'm going to show you this on the next slide, but slow moving. Think about, do you remember in science class when you learned about the states of matter and you learned about how water at room temperature has, average moving molecules? At high temperatures, when it's heated up, has molecules bouncing around so much that the water evaporates into steam. And at low temperatures, the molecules are so slow, they're barely even moving, and you have ice, right? Your emotions are the same way. This is the watery emotions. These are the average emotions that are at average temperature. These are the high level molecules, the high level emotions that are really buoyant. And these are the low molecule, barely moving, right? So this is a different way to look at it. Your self, your aura, your auric field, which science has already proven exists. This is not mumbo jumbo, okay? Your heart has a magnetic field. Your head has a magnetic field. The heart one is much larger. And so if you live in fear, your auric field is super contracted. And if you live in joy, enlightenment, peace, your auric feels very expansive. It's why like babies and animals gravitate to people who function in high level frequency emotions, right? So it's the same type of a thing, right? These low emotions, these sort of negative, heavy emotions, I like to call them, vibrate at very low frequency. So if you are in fear, grief, shame, guilt, you're in an emotional ice cube state. The molecules move very slowly. Don't wonder why you don't want to move. Don't wonder why you don't want to do anything, right? That's normal. That just makes sense. That's just the way of it. If you're in fear, you are scared, all you want to do is hide. That's standard. You're contracted, physically contracted. When you are in joy, peace, love, you're abundant, you're expansive. You're like, hey, everybody, come hug me, come love me. Look at how expansive I am, right? Those are high steam molecules moving very quickly in your system, bringing you up, right? It's why they say misery loves company. At low level emotional states, you will attract low level emotional things. I know this. I've done this. I've been there. I assure you, it is very real. In the summer of 2018, I attracted every negative thing you could possibly think of. Rock hitting a window, sink malfunctioning, tire blowing out, just weird things that made no sense. And I was in the lowest levels of fear, guilt, and shame because I knew I had done something really, really wrong, which I had in February 2018 to April 2018, but nobody had caught me yet. I knew it. The world didn't. That was a very hard place for me to be in. And so I was functioning in very low levels of fear, guilt, and shame because I was living a double life. And my reality reflected it. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. My cat died. I mean, you name it, it was just a disaster. July 2018, August 2018, disasters. And it was because misery attracts miserable things. If you are low level frequency, you're going to call in low level frequencies. Now, again, I won't go into the spiritual component of this, but there is one. If you know anything about the spirit world, there is a component to it. And I won't go into it here. When you're in the higher levels of joy and love and peace and enlightenment, you attract abundant things. It's why people say, like, oh, all these opportunities just started coming to me when I started doing this. Yeah, they will. Because joy attracts joy, and love attracts love, and peace attracts peace. Right? So the thing is, like, it's why, steam and ice really don't exist together. Not really, not unless one is very rapidly deteriorating to cause the other. Right? So it's the same thing in our emotional system. And this exists in every human. Every human has this, right? And so this is kind of a thing I was addressing before, and this is just a couple things. What ends up bringing us lower on the emotional frequency and or higher is this concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, I'm a big fan of Maslow's work. And so he was a psychologist, I want to say in the 50s, and he came up with this human-based needs chart. And everybody needs physiological things. Okay. You cannot, it's very hard to have a self-actualization if you do not have food, water, and rest. It's very difficult to do, right? I say it a lot. It's hard to be the light of the world when you can't keep the lights on. Now, the world wants to keep you down here. If all you're focused on is trying to provide the basic needs for yourself, don't wonder why you are very often in these low level frequencies. You are in the bare minimum of life. Now, again, the government, the powers that be, they want to keep you in low energy. It's why they sling you drugs and alcohol and sex and porn. They want to keep you in low level frequencies. Porn addiction, number one addiction in America, full of shame. Shame addiction. Well, guess what? You're not going to feel like a man if you're in a porn addiction. You're going to feel ashamed of yourself all the time. And the government loves it because you're easy to control. You're in low level frequency, right? So if you're focusing only on the basic needs of your life, go to work, make enough money to get by, pay your bills, rinse, repeat, you're not going to come into the higher levels of emotional abundance. And so we start moving into those higher levels when our psychological needs are met. But in order for our psychological needs to be met, our basic safety needs have to be met. So let's say you're 4 years old and you don't have a house and you don't have the means to eat all the time and you watch your parents struggling. You don't have warmth, you don't have safety, you don't have security. You're going to be in survival mode. And that's going to lodge in you, and you're going to be in survival mode for the rest of your life. And you're going to be probably mad and resentful your whole life, in hatred and anger and revenge. You're going to be miserable because you didn't have the basic needs provided for you as a child, and you're going to hold on to that for the rest of your life. And before you say that's not true, I see it all the time, especially in the generation, specifically of men who are in like 50 to 60 right now. Like 50, maybe 50 to 70. Miserable. Miserable. Not all of them, but they just had it rough as kids and they didn't know how to get out of it. In survival their whole life. And in low level frequencies their whole life, right? And so Maslow's hierarchy is a very good indicator of where did it go wrong for you. If you look and you're like, well, I never really felt like I belonged and I never felt like I had good intimate relationships or connections, well, don't wonder why you don't feel joy, peace, love, because you didn't get your psychological needs met. A lot of times if you have low self-esteem, you don't feel like you accomplished anything, you don't feel worthy, you're going to feel unfulfilled. You're going to be in this, the doubting, the worry, the discouraged place all the time because nobody encouraged you to be your authentic self. Nobody encouraged you to take on risks. Nobody encouraged you. You had no safety net, right? So much of this goes back to our upbringing. If you have never examined ages 0 to 7, 7 to 14, and 14 to 21, I beg you to do so. You want to book a connection call, go ahead. But like these things lodge in our emotional body. So the way you act at 30, 40, 50, 60 are a direct reflection of what happened to you from 0 to 7, 7 to 20, 7 to 14, and 14 to 21. It is why most people get stuck at the point of the pain in their past. It's why most people don't like music outside of what they listened to as a teenager. It's why our emotional, our memories, I can ask you about like, what was the worst memory you had as a kid? And you can remember right away, 9 times out of 10, right? So just trust me when I say, or don't trust me and keep living out your life. I don't care. But I would say, as someone who's been through all of it, you can trust me when I say this stuff is real and it is worth your investigating. Do the self and story work. Learn about your emotions. Okay. So some tips for you. Okay. If you ruminate on specific details of things that bother you, it's going to bring you down the emotional scale. The more you think about who did you wrong and who betrayed you and how bad it was in the specific instances and what they said, it's going to bring you down. So be more general. Well, he cheated on me with his secretary and he threw away 20 years of marriage and I have 10 kids. Yeah, he cheated on me and we're getting a divorce. Right? You can do yourself your own favors on trying to raise your emotional frequencies. A lot of times people try to do this where they're like trying to they're so sad and they're trying to pretend like they're so happy, right? Or they like, it's a really backhanded thing where they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm just never going to speak again, right? Or, oh, nobody loves me. And now it's very all or nothing. Don't try to do that. Just try to feel a little bit better, right? Um, you can't tell yourself that you can't tell yourself things you don't really believe. So if you're broke, you saying, well, I'm going to be a millionaire one day is not going to help you. But if you say, okay, well, let me just focus on making $100 this week, it will be a better, more believable thing for you. Now, again, you can say, I'm going to be a millionaire if you've done the work to believe, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. It doesn't matter what it looks like right now. Most people have not done that work. So I would say try to shift a little bit, not like try to jump for the stars yet, because you're not there yet. So as an example, when someone's angry, right? And people don't even, so this also requires you to be honest about the things you feel. That is a skill in and of itself. Most people don't know how to do it. Okay. I was one of them. My therapist, when I had her in 2018, was like, Michelina, how you doing today? And I was like, I'm fine. She was like, I read about you on the news this morning. I saw you in the news this morning. You cannot be fine. And I was like, I am fine. I'm always fine. I live in the fine state. And she gave me a piece of paper with faces on it. And she's like, how are you? And I looked and I was like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I'm mortified. I'm ashamed. I'm worried. I'm guilty. I'm fearful. I'm anxious. I'm dreading. I'm every face on there. And she was like, that's better. Because actually identifying what you are and having the language and admitting it to yourself is a skill most people don't have either. Right? We don't learn well about emotions. We didn't. Nobody was teaching us about how to just allow ourselves to be sad. Right? Our parents were saying things like, oh, well, stop crying because I'll give you something to be sad about. Yeah, stop crying because you're not even hurt that bad. Put some dirt on it, right? Like our parents were just negating our emotions all the time. And that's because their emotions were negated all the time. That's because nobody really realized how very crucial it is to pay attention to very human emotions and just let them move through you, right? Have a temper tantrum and move on. So you have to be able to identify that you're angry. So this might be hard for some people, honestly. But if you have done some of the work, then potentially this will help you. So you can be angry and then start to move into higher levels, right? So it's my parents' fault for feeding me the way they did as a kid. And then you can acknowledge that and you can say, well, they did the best they could with the money that we had. Or they did the best they could with the knowledge that we had of nutrition at that time, right? Or it feels like you can shift that perspective a little bit because it's not always true the way you look at things. It feels true. It doesn't mean it is true. Sure, maybe it is your parents' fault for feeding you the way they did as a kid, but they were doing the best they could with what they had. If they had better, they would have done better. Right? And so you want to look for ways to be a little more objective. So I'm tired of being fat. Yeah, well, aren't we all, right? But also, I'm grateful for the way that my body still moves. I'm grateful for the fact that if I get in the gym, I'll be able to lose the weight. I'm grateful for the fact that my body can move this fat to muscle if I'll just get up off my ass and do something. Right? Like we have a lot of entitled, lazy, victim mentality type people out there because they're living in these low level vibrational states of fear and guilt and shame, and they've got a learned helplessness about them. I'm going to make a post on that in a little bit. They have a learned helplessness about them. Don't let that be you. Okay. And so, with that being said, stop my share. With that being said, guys, like the emotional awareness is your job. You have to learn about the emotions. You have to learn about what emotions you really have. There's so many things that can be helpful to you better understanding how to function effectively as a human if you will just allow it. Right? But you have to be the one that's open to it. You have to have fertile soil in your head. You have to want to do the personal growth work. And it does take work. Nobody's shifting your reality except for you. If you hear all the time and don't output any doing, then you don't change. Nothing shifts. Nothing moves about. Okay, so I can give you every tool under the sun, but if all you do is intake and you don't shift anything and output anything, then you're not really doing the work, right? And so if you are interested in doing the work, I have offers for you. Obviously, this YouTube channel, obviously these types of videos, obviously things of that nature. I have 2 books on Amazon that are guidebooks, okay? They are specifically designed to guide you to think differently, okay? So it does take you taking the time, carving out time and thinking and journaling. And I can tell you right now, most people don't want to do that. We have very passive people nowadays. Passivity is not going to get you the life you want. It's not going to get you to think differently. It's not going to get you to grow. You need to do the work. Okay. If you are actually interested in doing high level work and transforming at quick levels, then you're going to want to book a call. But again, most people are not ready to jump from, hey, I think I want to shift to, wow, let me get a coach, right? That's not usually the case. Usually it's a little bit more gradual than that. If you are a spiritual, biblical type of person and you want to join the community that I have, by all means do. But it is biblically based and it is a spiritual community. So that may or may not be for you. But really, honestly, I don't care what you do, just do something. Do something different, right? Learn differently, grow. Because at the end of the day, like nobody's can do that but you. So I hope this was helpful. I'm going to start putting some of these out there. Like I said, I have coached on this before. I have taught on this before. It's not new. It's just to help you be a better human. And we all need help being a better human. We all need help doing life a little differently, because the pickle in the jar cannot read its own label. So if you still think, oh, I can handle this all by myself, you do not understand how life works. You do not understand what it is to be an effective human. You do not understand a lot of things. Okay. And so I hope I can help you understand it. But if not, then you're probably not even watching anymore. Okay. So I'll see you guys later.